In Unit 7, we're going to have a couple vocabulary words that you're going to see throughout the unit. And the first one is called a monomial. So this could be a number, it could be a letter, it could be numbers and letters together. But what I like to always look for is that there's no adding or subtracting in a monomial. So if you see something that is no adding or subtracting, it's just one thing, that is when you have a monomial. So the opposite would be a polynomial. This is when you do have that adding and subtracting. You have monomials added and subtracted together. So like a 3x minus 7 or negative 7x to the third minus 2x squared plus 9. You're not going to see this a whole lot, but the degree of a monomial is when you add your exponents together. So when there's no adding and subtracting, that's when you're going to add your exponents together. So for this one, your degree would be 5. And this one, we have an exponent of 4 and an exponent of 3. And that b has an exponent of 1. So when you add all of those together, you get a degree of 8. You're not going to see that as often as when you see the degree of a polynomial. So we're going to talk about that. The degree of a polynomial is your highest exponent. So on this first example, the highest exponent was 6, so that's why the degree is 6. On the next example, the highest exponent was 5, so your degree is 5. And then last vocab that you're going to see a lot, and this one's super important because every single answer you get in this unit should be written in standard form. So standard form is when you put your highest exponent first, and then you put them in order all the way down to the lowest exponent. So make sure that all of your answers are written like this. We have an exponent of 3, 2, an exponent of 1, and then no exponents at all. So it's from highest to lowest. So let's look at some examples of what those vocab words could look like. So with just a 7, this would be a degree of 0 because there aren't any exponents at all. So our highest exponent is nothing. So if you ever see just a number, there's no letters, this is called a constant. Just a number. And this would also be classified as a monomial because there's no adding or subtracting. Okay, next one is 4x. It doesn't show it, but I know that there's an exponent of 1. So my highest exponent is 1, meaning my degree is 1. If you ever see something that has just an x, its highest exponent is 1, that is when you're going to have a linear function. So if we were to graph 4x, it would become a straight line. And this is also classified as a monomial because there's no adding or subtracting. Okay, the next one, our highest exponent is 5, so that means our degree is 5. This one doesn't really have a special name. You could say 5th degree, but let's just leave this one blank because there's not really a fancy term for that one. And this one is classified as a polynomial because it does have that adding and subtracting. I'm going to give myself a little space here because since there's two things, an x to the 5th and a plus a 7, there's two things added together. We could also call this a binomial. Bi meaning 2. Okay, the next one is our highest exponent is 2, so our degree would be 2. And if you ever see something that's x squared, that highest exponent is squared, that is called a quadratic. So that is what we talked about in Unit 8. When you graph that, it's going to become a U shape. So this one is also classified as a polynomial because there is that adding and subtracting in there. And on this one, we see this one a lot. And so it has a special name as well. Since there's 3 things added together, this is called a trinomial. So these two, the binomial and the trinomial, you see a fair amount in this chapter or in this unit. So that's why they have those special names. Okay, the last one, the highest exponent is 3, so our degree would be 3. And we haven't talked about this yet, but if you ever see something that has the highest degree, or the degree is 3, that is called a cubic, when you have that x to the 3rd power being the highest. And this one also would be called a polynomial because it does have that adding and subtracting. It doesn't have a special name, just the binomial and the trinomial have that special name. Okay, so if you were to try these on your own, pause the video, give yourself a second, and try these out. Tell me what the degree is, and if it's a polynomial or a monomial. Now that you've tried those, let's go over it. This one had a highest exponent of 2, so that means the degree would be 2. It would also be classified as a polynomial because it does have that adding and subtracting in it. You could also call it a trinomial because it has 3 things added and subtracted together. Okay, B, the highest exponent was hiding. It was a 1, so our degree is 1. And this one also is a polynomial because it does have that adding and subtracting in there. You could also classify it as a binomial because there is 2 things added and subtracted together. Okay, example 1, write the polynomial in standard form. So this is where we have to put highest exponent first in order all the way down to the lowest exponent. So it looks like our highest exponent is positive 6x to the 4th. So I'm going to put that one first, and since it was positive, I don't really need a symbol in front of it. So I like to cross things out when I use them, so I'm going to cross that one out. And now I'm looking for an exponent of 3, which I have, and it's negative, so I'm going to put minus x to the 3rd, and I'm going to cross it out when I'm done. Now I want an exponent of 2, so that is minus 3x squared, and I'm going to cross it out. Make sure you're not losing those negatives when you rearrange. Okay, the next one, we need an exponent of 1, which it's always hiding. It's right here on this 7x. Since it's a positive 7x, I'm going to put plus 7x. And I'm going to cross it out since I used it. And last but not least, I have my constant, just that minus 5 with no exponents. So this is in standard form. Highest exponent all the way down to lowest exponent. Okay, let's try these next 2 on our own if you want to pause the video to try before I go over them. Okay, now that you've gone over them, let's put it in standard form together. The first one should have been negative 3x to the 3rd. That was the highest exponent. And then next should have been positive 6x squared. And then a positive 7. So I'm going to put plus 7. On B, you should have had negative 8y squared first. And then a positive 2y. And then a minus 3. Okay, let's try another example. Example 2. So on this one, it wants us to use combining like terms, and it wants us to write our answer in standard form. So 2 things to do here. So on this first one, I'm going to always look for my like terms first to see what can go together. So I notice that this 4x can go with a 2x, which is going to give me a positive 6x. 4x plus 2x is going to give me 6x. Okay, then I see I can put this 3x squared with a positive 1x squared. So that's going to give me positive 4x squared. And then that last little guy, plus 5, doesn't have anyone to go with, so I'm just going to bring it down. Now I need to double check, do I have my answer written in standard form, which I do not. So I need to put my highest exponent first. So that positive 4x squared is going to come out front. Then the positive 6x, and then the positive 5. Okay, if you want to try the next two on your own, pause the video and come back and see what you get. Okay, now that you've tried that, you should have put together 4x squared minus x squared, giving you 3x squared. Then you can put together a negative 3x plus 3x, which is going to cancel out, giving you nothing. Since you got 0, you do not have to write anything. A lot of people try to put plus x when they get something that cancels, but that really means that we have plus 1x, which we know we did not have. It was 0. So make sure you're not putting that plus x in there and confusing yourself. Okay, on the next one, we should have put together 7y cubed with a positive 5y cubed. So when you put those together, you should have gotten 12y cubed. Then I see that negative 3y minus 2y can go together, and that should give me minus 5y. And then that positive 7 doesn't have anyone to go with, so it's going to go on the end. Now, you should have double checked if both of your answers were in standard form, and they happen to be in standard form, so we are done. Okay, example 3. So now they're taking two binomials, or two polynomials, and adding them together. So when you are adding, this is super important, just for adding, you really can just take these two polynomials out of the parentheses. They're not really changing anything. So this was a positive 3x squared, I'm going to bring that down, and a positive 6. So now that I've taken them out of those parentheses, I can just combine like terms and write my answer in standard form. So first off, I'm going to combine like terms. So 4x squared goes with positive 3x squared, giving me 7x squared. And then this 2x doesn't look like it has anyone to go with, so I'm just going to bring it down. And then negative 3x goes with a positive 6, giving me positive 3. Then I double check, is my answer in standard form? Which it is, so I'm done. Okay, if you want to pause the video to try the next two on your own, go ahead. Now that you've tried them, you should have taken them out of the parentheses. This was a, right here, this was a negative x, so I'm going to bring that down as a negative x. And then that was a positive 9, so make sure you had those correct. Okay, when you went to combine like terms, this 3x squared didn't have anyone to go with, so you should have brought it down. And then 2x minus x can go together, giving you a positive 1x, or you can just say plus x. And then positive 9 didn't have anyone to go with either, so you are done. And I know that my answer is in standard form already, so I don't have to do anything else. Okay, on the next one, you should have done the same thing, taken those out of the parentheses. And when you do that, we get negative 2x squared plus 5x minus 7. And then it was a positive 3x and a positive 7. So now that we've done that, we can combine like terms. Negative 2x squared doesn't go with anybody else, so I'm just going to bring it down. Positive 5 x and positive 3x can go together, giving me positive 8x. And then negative 7 plus 7 happens to cancel out, so I don't have to put anything because that becomes 0. I double check. My answer is in standard form, so I am done. All right, last example. Now we are subtracting. This is where you have to be very careful and pay attention to what operation they're telling you to do. With subtraction, you have to do an extra little step, which is, this is actually like having a negative 1 right there. So what I'm going to have to do is distribute that negative 1. My first set of parentheses is not going to change. I'm going to bring it down exactly how it was. Nothing should change. But that negative is going to affect my second parentheses. So I'm going to do negative 1 times 3x squared, which gives me negative 3x squared. Then negative 1 times 5x is negative 5x. And negative 1 times negative 8 would give me a positive 8. So now that I have distributed that negative 1, I can combine my like terms. So 6x squared is going to go with negative 3x squared, giving me positive 3x squared. Then I see that 3x can go with negative 5x, which is going to give me negative 2x. And negative 2 is going to go with a positive 8, which is going to give me positive 6. So I double check. My answer is in standard form, so I am finished. Okay, if you want to pause to try the examples on your own, go ahead. Now that you've tried those examples, you should have put that negative 1 in there that you needed to distribute. So our first set of parentheses stays the same. And then our second one, all the signs should flip when we multiply by that negative 1. So negative 1 times the negative x should have given you a positive x. And negative 1 times positive 4 should have given you a negative 4. Now that you've done that, you can combine your like terms. 3x squared doesn't go with anyone else, so I'm going to bring it down. 4x can go with a positive x, giving me positive 5x. And positive 2 can go with negative 4, giving me negative 2. And my answer is in standard form, so I am done. Okay, on the last example, you should have also put that negative 1 in there that we need to distribute. So negative 5x minus 6 just comes down, does not change. Negative 1 times 4x squared should be negative 4x squared. And negative 1 times positive 6 should give you negative 6. Okay, then when you are combining like terms, I like to double check and look for that standard form first. So I see my highest exponent was negative 4x squared, which does not go with anyone else, but I'm going to put it first because it's my highest exponent. Then I see that negative 5x is what should go next in my standard form, and it doesn't have anyone else to go with, so I'm going to bring it down as well. And last, the negative 6 minus 6 can go together. Careful, they do not cancel each other out. Negative 6 minus 6 gives you a negative 12. And our answer is in standard form, so we are done.